Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. So I turned 25 this year, and I noticed in myself and in my friends as we began to reach this big milestone in life that there was almost this hesitancy to become older. Like turning 25 is sort of the downward slope that turns to 30 that becomes old. And to some extent, I understand this. There's a really common feeling among people my age that we've missed the train somehow, that everybody else is off living their best life and we've just fallen behind the curve. I do think it's a modern disease to feel like you're perpetually behind in life. Like if you haven't started a business from scratch, or written a best-selling novel, or blown up online by the time you're 25, that you're somehow behind. And I'm talking to myself here too. I'm a perfectionist, and sometimes I think it's ridiculous how much pressure I put on myself to be perfect. But I was listening to a podcast by Jordan Peterson the other day, and something he said really struck me. He said that the antidote to resentment is gratitude. And I think that's particularly true when it comes to fear of missing out on your own life, because gratitude opens up your eyes to the incredible life you're already living. I mean, just think about it. Every January, we sit down and write out a list of goals and resolutions for ourselves. How often do we actually sit down and think of all the things we've done that we're proud of? It feels like too often we rush ahead to the next goal, to the next phase of life, without actually pausing to reflect on the things that we have achieved, the things we worked really hard for. I remember one time in college, my English professor actually posed this question to us and had us journal about it for 20 minutes. She asked, "What is the piece of writing you've created that you're most proud of?" And as I sat there and I thought about it, I almost started crying because it was such a relief. Rather than focusing on all the things that you haven't done, that you should be doing, to sit down and think, I did that. I'm proud that I did that. When I was 15 or 16 and trying to imagine what I wanted my life to look like, I made a 25 by 25 list, which is basically exactly what it sounds like, a bullet-pointed list of all the things I wanted to experience by the time I turned 25. So today I thought it would be fun to look back at that list of 25 things. Some of those things I did, some of them I didn't, but there were also things that were not on that list that I'm very proud of. Alright, so this is me taking stock, being grateful for the markers of my life so far, and hopefully encouraging you to do the same. Without any further ado, here are 25 things that I'm glad I did by 25. Okay, so the first thing on my list was study abroad in England for a semester. So in fall 2018, I joined a study abroad program through my college and traveled to the United Kingdom and to the Republic of Ireland for 3 months. It was hugely formative. It was a life-changing experience for me, for too many reasons to squish into this video. In a nutshell, it really broadened my understanding of the world and other cultures beyond my own. It was the first time I had left Northern America, and I think it was really powerful to be able to walk the landscapes that my favorite authors had walked and to be able to see the places that inspired these stories that had formed me so much. It was intimidating at first. I was 20 years old when I left, but it was hugely rewarding and formative, and I would recommend that to anybody. If you have the chance to study abroad, I'd say definitely do it. Alright, so second on the list was graduate debt-free from college with honors. I feel like my experience in college was a roller coaster, but I'm really glad I stuck to it. It was a roller coaster because I transferred. I originally started my college education at a local community college where I was taking general ed classes, and then I transferred over to Westmont College for my upper division work, and I loved Westmont College. And it was very stressful trying to save up money for it. I worked over the summers. I took a gap year off of school to work and save up money, but it was a dream of mine to go to Westmont College, and I graduated with honors with a degree in English, and I worked really hard to make it happen, even if it was interrupted with landslides and evacuations, and even if it ended in a pandemic. I'm still very glad that I stuck it out. It was worth it. Okay, third, get a master's degree. When I wrote this, I didn't know what I wanted a master's degree in, which was a little bit of an oversight. This one isn't complete yet, but it's in progress. I am currently enrolled in the Pacific University Master of Fine Arts program, which is in creative writing. And this was pretty huge for me. I'm really glad I pursued this because I've always wanted to be a writer. And so pursuing this program kind of felt like a way to take that aspiration seriously and put in the work. I've loved it. I've become a much better writer because of it, and I've met some really incredible people along the way. So because of that, I'm very glad that I took that next step. Okay, so the fourth thing on this list was start a blog, which I did do for 2 years. From 2018 to 2020, I blogged every week, and you can find it over at simplyoliviagrace.com, and I can link that down below if you're interested. I stopped it in 2020 because it was kind of cutting into the time that I had for writing. Looking back, I think the biggest thing I learned from putting out weekly blog posts was just being able to turn my lived experiences into words, but also just to be able to share my work publicly. I don't think I had any more than maybe 5 people reading that blog, but it felt really good to have some way to put it out into the world. I was notoriously shy about my writing growing up and never shared it with anybody. So this was a good way for me to kind of get out of my comfort zone and share my work in a way that didn't feel intimidating. And maybe someday I'll pick it back up again, who knows. Okay, so the next one was a very ambitious goal. I wanted to write and publish my fantasy trilogy by the time I was 25 years old. I feel like this is a classic example of over expectations for yourself. In high school, I wrote a full-length fantasy trilogy just for fun, mostly, over 300,000 words. And the first book of that trilogy is actually the book that I'm revising now and rewriting for my MFA program. I read once that there's 3 stages to the novel writing process. The first is to write it down, the second is to write what you mean, and the third is to write it well. And I feel like I'm somewhere between the second and third stages at this point, which is a very exciting place to be. And I never would have gotten there if I hadn't just let myself have fun with the novel while I was in high school, and just really let myself enjoy the writing process. The next thing was skydive. I think in hindsight, I probably put this on this list because it scared the living daylights out of me. But in January 2021, I went with a group of friends, and it was it was terrifying, it was fun, it was exhilarating, it was the adrenaline rush of a lifetime. So anyway, I'm glad I did it, even if only once. Alright, so the next one's kind of cute. I wrote Fall in Love. Yes, I wrote that on my 25 before 25 list. So yes, this happened. So my now husband was actually my childhood crush, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I never in a million years thought that it was going to work out, but we reconnected in 2020 right after the pandemic hit and got married 2 years later, so here we are. Okay, number 8. So this is very niche. Have a life planning retreat at the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs. Okay, so I didn't quite actually have a life planning retreat at the Broadmoor Hotel, which sounded very cool as a 15-year-old. But I did attend the Anselm Society's Imagination Redeemed conference 2 years in a row, which is in Colorado Springs, and I visited the Broadmoor both times. Okay, 9, go wine tasting. So this is kind of funny because I grew up my entire life in wine country in the middle of California, but somehow never got around to actually going wine tasting until last year. Okay, so now we're getting to the kind of tricky ones. Number 10 was live on my own in an apartment for 6 months. So this one's a little bit interesting. Pretty much immediately after I graduated, because of the pandemic, I ended up moving home with my family in my hometown. So I do regret this one a little bit. I think I would have grown a lot as a person if I'd lived on my own for a few months. But with rent being so expensive in California and the timing not quite being right, I just never got around to it. So I met my now husband almost immediately after graduating college, and we got married and moved in together a year ago. So we did have a home of our own that I was able to kind of nest up and make cozy. So I didn't live on my own, but I did have my own place, if that makes sense. Okay, so the next one on the list is visit Prince Edward Island. So I'm a huge Anne of Green Gables fan. I used to read the series over and over and over again. My mom and sister and I would watch the movies every single time we were sick. And my whole family actually probably binge-watched the Road to Avonlea series at least 3 times the whole way through. So suffice to say, I really wanted to go see Prince Edward Island to see the place that had formed Lucy Maud Montgomery's imagination and all these stories. So it was a dream come true to be able to go there. I went with my mom and sister in 2016 after I graduated high school. That was my high school graduation trip. We had tea, we saw lighthouses, we went to the White Sands. It was incredible. Okay, so the next one on this list was take a 3-month road trip around the United States. So originally when I wrote this list at 15, I was picturing doing this with my high school best friend. I think we imagined that when we graduated, we would buy an Airstream trailer and a Jeep and go road trip for 3 months around the country and see all these cool things and live on the road. But the way it actually happened was in 2017, my family packed up in a trailer and we actually traveled around the country for 3 months. We called it the Howdy America Tour. We started from California, went up into Oregon and Washington, and then went across the country to the East Coast, traveled down, and then back through Texas and to the West Coast again. Got to see a lot of incredible places that we only ever read about growing up, so to be able to get a sense of the country you live in, especially a country as big as the United States, and being able to do it as a family was a really, really special experience. Okay, so the next on the list is attend a Taylor Swift concert. This happened. I saw Taylor Swift on her Reputation tour in 2018. My best friend and I did like a whole 13-hour road trip to go see her down in Pasadena. But then, oh guys, I had Loverfest tickets. R.I.P. as the youth say. And recently, after much stress and frustration, I was able to snag the Eras Tour tickets, but it took months and many tears. Okay, so Next on the list was go see Harry Potter World at Warner Brothers Studios, and this did happen, but it was in March 2020. I went with some college friends and we went down for a day, and it was actually the very last weekend before shutdown for the pandemic, back when COVID was kind of this far off rumor floating around on the news, so that was incredible timing. Okay, so next on the list was a road trip to Zion National Park. So this was actually super fun. This was April 2021. My best friend, my boyfriend, and my sister and I all packed up in this little car and went camping out in Zion, and that was it was really fun. It was a whirlwind of a weekend, but we just made it happen. It was really cool. Next was take a road trip to Big Sur for the weekend. I've been there on a day trip, so I'm just gonna say that counts. I've never been there for a weekend camping. I still think that would be really fun. Next was visit Hawaii, and that did happen. That was last year. I finally was able to make it to, my husband and I traveled to Kauai for our honeymoon. Okay, number 18 now was go on a road trip to the Pacific Northwest, which I did with my family in 2015, but I also have gone up there for the residencies for the MFA program, so I'm going to count that as well. Okay, number 19 was travel across Europe for 3 months, and I think I originally thought this was going to be a backpacking trip, but instead, due to a series of unpredictable events, my husband and I were actually able to go this year, and we traveled for, it wasn't 3 months, but it was 6 weeks, so I'm gonna say it counts. And we kind of hit the highlight reel of all the places that I'd always dreamed of going, which was London, Spain, Italy, Austria, and France. So 6 weeks, it was incredible. Definitely a dream come true. So some kind of like subsequent goals in the same category were visit the Italian coastline, which yes, that happened. We went to the Amalfi Coast and it was incredible. The last goal was drink a glass of champagne by the Eiffel Tower. We didn't quite get there because we were misinformed about when the tower lights sparkled, and so we went at midnight when we thought the lights would go on, but turns out the lights stopped at 11:05 or something, so not quite. Okay, so next we come to the category of things that I did not get to in my 25 before 25 list. The first was publish an article, essay, or poem in a print magazine. Next was write and publish my debut novel. This was a different novel than the fantasy series. I did draft it, but it's not published. And next was go on a skiing trip to a cabin in the snow, and then lastly, see the northern lights in Iceland. Okay, so even though I didn't end up reaching those 4 goals on my list, I wanted to share 4 other things that were not on my original list that I did do that I am, in hindsight, super proud of. So first on that list was rededicating my life to Christ and getting baptized. This happened a couple years ago. Second, establishing really strong friendships with each member of my family. Thirdly, filming videos. I've always loved capturing life on film and then putting it to music, so I'm really glad I gave myself enough permission to explore that hobby of mine, even though it really hasn't gone anywhere so far. Fourth and last, I journaled every day for 10 years. Being able to write down the things I learned or the moments that I experienced during some of the most formative years of my life, I'm just really, really glad that I took the time to do that. So there you have it. That's my highlight reel. And the last thing I want is for this to come across like I'm listing off things that should be measured against. That's not at all what this video is intended for. Instead, I hope that this video inspires you to look at your life in a new light and notice all the different precious moments and experiences you've already lived through. I think if I could give you any big takeaway from this video, it would be that we shouldn't be afraid to get older. Growing older just means more life experiences, more beauty encountered, more maturity, more lessons learned, more memories made, more life lived. And I get it, it's so easy to look ahead and be so focused on your goals and ambition that you forget just how far you've come already, how far you've grown. There are dreams that you wanted as a kid that came true years ago and you've already forgotten about them. So just have grace for yourself to knowing that you have so much time left to become the person you want to be. But my encouragement would be take a few minutes to grab your notebook, pull open that notes app on your phone, write out a number for every year that you've lived and start filling it in with just all those experiences you're so glad to have lived. It could be that one time you read 50 books in a year, places you've traveled, or concerts or conferences you've been to. It could be the fanfic you wrote in high school because you loved it so much, or a time you learned a musical instrument, or even a relationship that you've put a lot of work into that you're proud of, or even a trait that you worked really hard to cultivate in yourself. Whatever it is, write them all down. Just take some time to be grateful for how hard you've worked to get exactly where you are today and all the memories you've made so far. If you feel comfortable, I would love it if you would share your list down in the comments below so I could cheer you on and encourage you. But if not, thank you for watching today's video, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll catch you next time. Bye.